Welcome, everyone. I'm Laura DeFranco, the CEO of Brave Healer Productions, where we have a mission to wake the world up to what's possible. And here today to help me with that mission are some of the most amazing authors of a new book that we have coming out. This is called Sacred Spaces, and it's volume 2, you guys. We have subtle shifts for the mind, body, and home transformation. And this book, oh my goodness, Colleen Avis is our lead author. I want to say a big thank you to her before I introduce you to these powerful women that I have here today. Colleen, we wouldn't be here without you. Thank you so much for this book idea, for the mission that you have behind Sacred Spaces, and for the beautiful community that you're building with this stellar expert author cast, some of which I'm about to introduce to you today, you guys. But I'm just so honored that you said yes to this, Colleen, and thank you so much. So who do I have here with me today? Mary Ellen Keating is the founder of Keating Custom, a business that helps you find the right gift for someone, which expresses the perfect story. I love that, Mary Ellen. Nicole Aiken is a certified sex addiction therapist and certified partner trauma therapist, whose work focuses primarily on encouraging the relational healing and post-traumatic growth of relationally betrayed partners. And Tanya Saunders is with me. She is a nurse, anesthetist, you made me say that word, life coach, energy practitioner, and positive neuroplasticity teacher. She supports working moms of adolescent girls to beat the negativity bias of the mind through repatterning stress, evolving their relationships, and embodying work-life harmony. You guys going to give me an award for reading those bios today? I don't know. I think I get an award for all those crazy words. No, if you all don't feel already the power of the women that I have here with me, I'm not sure how to help you, because you're about to hear a little bit about the why behind that. Mary Ellen, you're going to start this party off today. Tell us about the amazing chapter that you wrote.
So my chapter is chapter 11, and it's called Gratitude in a Bottle: How to Turn a Health Crisis and a Job Loss into a Gift. And yes, all of that happened to me in January of 2019 when I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I was a senior executive at a Fortune 500 company, working hard and busy every single day, and really didn't take the time for myself, for my health. There was always a meeting or an event that I had to go to, and I was always canceling my mammogram appointments. Finally, a woman I worked with encouraged me to go and have one, and I did, and was shocked to find out in the process that I actually had a tumor. And it turned out that it was breast cancer. And I think it's apropos that we're having this conversation. It is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, the month of October. And every 2 minutes, a woman in the United States is diagnosed with breast cancer. So this is a journey many women have gone through and are going through or will go through. So I wasn't writing this chapter just to write it. It wasn't only therapeutic for me. I did it because I hoped in the process of writing about my journey that I could help one woman out there.
Yes, thank you for doing that. And thank you for your vulnerable story and the way that you put it out there in this book. And yeah, that's pretty cool. It wasn't on my radar about October. October is a couple things, and actually the two things tie in together, because Breast Cancer Awareness Month, as well as Mental Health Awareness Month. And you probably know, Mary Ellen, that a lot of the health you had to preserve was your mental health while you were going through something as intense as that. What else do you want to tell us about that?
Well, I figured out pretty quickly how important it was to have a positive mindset, that my mental health really had to be very much in check. So I surrounded myself with friends and family who became my team. These were the people who literally got me through every day. And they created a sacred space for me, which is why I'm so, so honored to be part of a book that's called Sacred Spaces. So, I think everything in my life changed in a dime, my health. And at the same time, my company was going through a strategic alternatives process in order to get sold, and it finally did get sold. And I lost my job right as I finished my last chemo treatment in February of 2020. So a health crisis, and also this huge career shift for me, trying to figure out at that point, what I was going to do with the rest of my life.
Oh my gosh. And then COVID.
And COVID, yes, there was that.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot. You said something earlier about the people around you. Go ahead.
I guess in saying that too about people around me, I also had to figure out what practices would help me, keep a sharp mental state and keep myself positive. And I went into a card store one day and I found this bottle. It almost looked like a jug with a little top on it. And I bought it and I took it home, and I decided that every morning that I got up, I was going to write down what I was grateful for. Even though so many of these days I had no hair, I lost all my hair after 3 weeks, and I was really, really sick. And I went to work every day. I just put my chemo treatment on my calendar as if it was another meeting. And I got up every morning and I wrote a note to my mother, who had died from ovarian cancer years earlier. I wrote her a note every morning and I put it in the bottle. It was a note about what I was grateful for that day. And that helped me so much. And also just getting up, getting suited up every day and going to work, and acting as if this cancer was not going to get to me. And it didn't. I mean, I really was able to get through it by keeping that positive mindset. And so my message to women out there is that you can get through this. And while it seems like most days when you're going through treatment that you're never going to physically feel the same again, I'm here to say that you do.
Thank you so much for being here today. All right, you guys, stay tuned. You're going to hear more from Mary Ellen in just a minute or two. Nicole, you're up next. Tell us about your amazing chapter.
Well, my chapter is chapter 7. The title is Homeward Bound. And really, it's a lot about my own journey to tapping into the feeling of home within inside myself. I think for a long time, and I think many people and the people that I work with tend to look at externally outside themselves for a feeling of safety. And so my journey and my story is about where I accessed the feeling of home through my grandmother. And once I lost her, I didn't know how to access that feeling myself. And so it's really kind of trying to help people who go through maybe some sort of traumatic experience, because I work with a lot of betrayed partners who experience attachment injuries, and trying to help them to develop practices where they can access that feeling of home or that feeling of safety or comfort within inside themselves. And so that's really what my chapter is about.
Betrayal is an intense topic, and it can get the worst of you. And I wonder just maybe what else you want to say about that if we have listeners who are in the middle of dealing, maybe in those, whatever stage they're in. Yeah. Tell us, what else do you want them to know?
Yeah. So you're right. And that it's pretty devastating to people who experience betrayal. And it's what I want what I want people to know or share is through my work that I've found that these individuals, when they experience it, they have trusted. It's usually someone they very much trusted in their life, a very significant figure, a significant other, a parent. Betrayal can show up in many different ways, but and it's someone they thought they could really truly trust, and it really impacts them heavily when they discover that that trust has been broken, that they've been betrayed. They go through various phases: crisis, grief, loss, anger, a lot of anger in the beginning, and they're really trying to get back to safety, which again very much ties in back to the chapter, because it's trying to provide some tools and practices, which is what I also love about the concept of sacred spaces in the book. So
Me too. One more thing about that, I think that, if you have been betrayed and you might have been a very loving, trusting person up until that moment, I think it's extremely difficult to move back into the person you used to be after this happens to you. It's like you don't want to trust anyone or anything after that. What do you think is the first step back to that trusting heart?
that's a good question. Because, and I share this in my chapter, but oftentimes they come in thinking it's about rebuilding trust with the other person, and that is a big part of the process. However, oftentimes the things that they don't always see coming is that it's rebuilding trust with themselves, because as you pointed out, they start to lose, they don't realize that they've lost parts of themselves, even until this thing has happened, until this devastating moment and betrayal has hit them. And it's this that sort of shifts that and causes them to realize that they have lost those parts. So the work then becomes finding those parts of themselves, which is, something I talk a lot about in the chapter.
Yeah, we can't give it all away, you guys.
Okay, sorry.
No. I'm just saying to myself too. I'm like, I'm just going to keep asking you questions because this is a hot topic.
Yeah.
But you guys will read everything in the chapter that Nicole wrote, which I can't wait. This is tough. This is probably one of the toughest. And like you said, there's a lot of ways that this can happen to people. I think for me, and I know this is part of what you help your clients do, I needed to build back up the fierce connection with my own intuition again. Mm-hmm. And that was the trust. Yes. I had to trust that again. That fell apart for me. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know where I was anymore. And it was like, oh my gosh, okay, how do I get that back? Because it was okay before. We had a moment and now we got to get back, Well,
that attachment bond that you have with that person is so strong. And then when that's sort of ruptured, then it does sort of send you through a process of, okay, how can I get to being okay with inside myself? So that's part of the, thing I love about the work that I do is helping those people to get those individuals on that journey to find that within inside themselves again.
Thank you so much for being here, Nicole.
Thank you.
All right, stay tuned, you guys. More from Nicole in a moment. Tanya, how about you? Tell us about your chapter.
Hi. Well, I just wanted to say thank you first, Laura, and to Colleen, and to Mary Ellen and Nicole, just for sharing your stories, which is so much about, what Sacred Spaces is about. And so my chapter is chapter 3, which is about a healthy mind and how to just heal the negativity bias of the mind and integrate work-life harmony, which is really about my journey. I like to call myself like a multi-hyphenated woman. I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a mom to 3 kids. I'm also a nurse anesthetist, like you said, and I do have my own business in coaching and breath work and astrology. And it's really about how we can just like really, modern science has basically just shown that we live from the past. And unless we are intentional with working with our minds, that our yesterday, our past is always going to be our today and our tomorrow. So there's a lot of shame and guilt that comes along with being a working mom. And it is really so much about learning the science, learning the science of how our minds work. when we do experiences, something like what Mary Ellen had, like with cancer, or what Nicole has, like dealing with people who deal with betrayal. So how do we work with these negative experiences and really create more awareness, more consciousness to be able to direct our minds to just create more harmony, create more of that life that we want. And really the science of it all is how we learn to integrate, integrate. The world is just all about dichotomies, so it's like, I want to be at home, and then I also want to be at work, or and the integration piece, learning the science of the integration piece, the linking of how really creates a sense of health and of wholeness, and more of that sense of harmony. And so I just take them through a practice of how to do it after they've learned really a sense of empowerment of how the mind works, and how to be able to not shame or guilt, because it's just a part of our negative mind, but then really how to create against that sense of focus and a sense of significance and meaning in every moment.
I think the awareness of the negativity bias is really important. I think that, well, I want to ask you more about the why, because I hear a lot, I see a lot and read a lot like, oh, we can't be positive all the time, but it's not about that. But so talk to me a little bit more about that piece.
Oh, sure. Okay. So when I talk about integration and I talk about like dichotomies, I always like to talk about like what is true, what is a lie for you in the moment. And so it is in recognition of like really truly like what you are experiencing, right? So right now, like I'm just going to give you an example. Like I'm experiencing like a little bit of anxiety, and that's like real in the moment, and I just start to, and I can focus on that anxiety, or I can all of a sudden just start to focus on the gratitude of, oh my gosh, I'm here with these powerful women. I get to again share how like all of these brave words, these practices, these really lived experiences, being gratitude of that, get to create shifts and inspiration in whoever's going to read the book. So it's a sort of like linking between what could be negative, the anxiety, the fear, public speaking, not being good enough, all that kind of unworthiness, natural sort of negativity, meaning what doesn't benefit us. Or I can link to like the positive, meaning what would be more beneficial, what would not cause me suffering, and then that linking of those two differences creates a coherence and a resonance. And that resonance, when there's something at a higher level, a more positive, higher elevation, higher vibration, that creates a higher vibrational beingness, so that becomes sort of the positive, meaning it doesn't cause you suffering.
Yeah. And even if I wanted to talk about for a second, it doesn't cause illness and disease.
Yeah.
which a constant low vibe negativity bias will actually do. I mean, this is a powerful subject, really. With awareness, we have the choice. I love so much what you just did in your example, because, we're here on the podcast and sometimes you have a little performance anxiety and you can kind of feel your heart and yeah. But that was so beautiful, because I love the flip to gratitude that you helped us with. Yeah.
And Mary Ellen started with that too.
Yes.
How she started, you can focus on the cancer. It's not like you're not being aware of it or resisting it or avoiding it. It's a choice. That's like in that spaciousness, when you realize, when you're in awareness, when you're in consciousness, that's where choice opens up. And that's where you start to break those patterns of negativity bias, or like really truly like what our bodies and brains are designed to do. That's just to keep us safe. And so thank you, body, brain, for wanting to keep us safe. And we know there's like a higher vibrational, a higher version of ourselves, a more fuller expression that feels better for us, that we get to choose and expand into.
Yes. Tanya, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank all three of you for not just for saying yes to this project, but for so beautifully stepping up to take on that challenge I had for you to write a vulnerable story and let us get to know you. You all did that. And I love that piece of this because there's healing in it for the reader. I know that for us writers, there's healing in that. And then there's another moment for the reader. And then you stepped up in addition to drop your master teachings for us in a practical way. So listeners, you are just get ready for the gift that is this book. It is full of golden nuggets of wisdom, but also practical strategies that you can put into place as soon as you read a chapter. So speaking of these sacred spaces that we're talking about today, Nicole, I'm going to start this with you. What to you makes a space sacred?
Good question. To me, well, I don't want to give away too much of the book, but my practice had a lot to do. My practice, that I included was Hygge self-care box. It's about comfort. It's about tapping into. I really think it has a lot to do with tapping into different sensory experiences that might be able to cause someone to feel completely relaxed, comfortable, safe, open, vulnerable. In my work, I do a lot of work on vulnerability, and and so a place where you just feel so at ease and relaxed and open, to where you feel so vulnerable, you can just be completely and authentically yourself and just give in to the moment. So that's what I think a sacred space would be. For me, it's nature. It's, I talk a lot about feeling, at home when I think about my grandma, and just sort of tapping into that sensory. So it's people that I felt safe with. It's a place, it's nature. That might be a sacred space for me.
So your chapter was the first time I had read about Hygge. Spell that for us, would you?
Yeah, well, yes. So it's pronounced, let me pull up my practice here, but it's
Okay.
Pronounced Hygge, and it's HOOG, dash GAH for the pronunciation. But give me a second and I believe it's HY. Hold on, I'm pulling it up right now.
You got it. It's HYGGE, I think.
Yes. Yeah, HYGGE. Thank you. But the pronunciation is Hygge.
It's such a funny word. And I had read it in your chapter first, and believe it or not, I heard it again this morning before we were to get on this interview together. And I'm like, I've heard that before. I can't remember where, because it's been a while since I read your chapter, right? And so here you are talking about it again. I'm like, ding, 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 ding. I think I'm gonna have to go look into that a little bit more. But the way that I heard it this morning was it's the Danish strategy for happiness or something like that.
Yeah, it's a Danish phrase or term for how, like, comfort, and that, like I said, that can be different for everybody. But I was just trying to come up with something different from the terminology of self-care, which just
totally.
So like it's a buzzword, and I really was trying to tap more into that sensory of, like, what feeling is it that I want them to be able to access. And so that's when I thought, like, oh, Hygge, and so that's where I kind of came up with that.
That's perfect. And it's awesome. And it made me think of the, I can't even think of the word, those places where you go smoke the pipes. Tell me, somebody help me out. What's that place called? Like, it's this an H word,
Hygge.
right?
Hygge.
Right? There we go. And I'm like thinking, no, this
Or is
can't
that
be
your
what that's all
sacred
about.
space?
Yeah, no, not the Hygge space, no.
The Hygge. Okay.
Like warm socks, candles, like, nature going, that, yeah. But that's funny.
Awesome. All right, Tanya, how about you? What's to you makes a space sacred?
So it's so interesting how, like, your perspective just evolves. Like, I used to think of, like, a sacred space as just, always intentional, but it would be like just off away and like, just, I don't know. So what lands with me now, it's a feeling. it's a feeling that it's like this indwelling place, the sense of like a home base that you can have anywhere. It's like a ceremony within yourself. You know what I mean? So it's like I've just cultivated, this is not something that it's been that way. It's a sacred space that I've learned to cultivate over time, where it's like I learned to, like, when I'm in that so-called red zone, reactive, not responsive to anything, just very much in my fight flight. It is just a sense of calm and peace, feeling again that sense of, and I know it sounds esoteric because again, it's just a feeling that you have to experience of just feeling at home and calm inside. And I can have that sacred space that I've learned anywhere, with within my kids, at work in the OR, when I'm in a stressful situation, when I'm feeling alone. Sometimes it's like I know I can cultivate it. So it's a sacred space to me is more of like this home base of feeling a sense of just aligned to my authenticity, my truth, my home, where the noise in my mind just starts to settle. And that feels like just like a sense of ceremony within myself every day that I can cultivate for any moment.
I love it. I love listening to all of your ways to talk about this. Okay, Mary Ellen, how about you? What to you makes the space sacred?
Well, all of my daily practices that include, and I touched upon, daily gratitude being the most important one, making sure I get enough rest so that I feel good, making my health a top priority, which I think all women need to do. But I also have created a sacred space in my own business. I think it's interesting that I feel like I'm giving people a gift by telling my story. And I created a business around gifting so that I'm not just going out and buying tons of gifts for people and wrapping them and sending them. I spend time talking to people about who they're going to give the gift to and who this person is. And once I know so much about that person, I curate a gift around it. And I think what people love about what I do, and I love the fact that I'm getting to be creative, really creative for the first time in my sacred space. I actually write a story that I do in calligraphy for them that tells a story because I am at heart a storyteller. And the gift, when the person opens it, is actually reading the story as they're opening the gift. And so for me, that's the sacred space that I've created, the daily practice of this new business around gifting.
I love that you tied this into your business. I think I have not drawn lines between my life and business because my business is part of my life. When it's aligned fully with who I am, it feels like this beautiful space, this sacred space. And you're right, it's of creativity, alignment, joy, energy. Who wouldn't want more work?
Exactly.
You know? Yeah, it's so beautiful. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this holistic approach that all of you authors are taking. Tanya, I'm going to start with you for this. Actually, all of the books from Brave Healer take a holistic approach. That's on purpose. On your personal journey, why has it been important for you to take a holistic approach?
It goes back to integration. When I talked about integration is wholeness, and that becomes a recognition that we are multidimensional, and energy can't be compartmentalized. And so when we think about holistic, I do think about physical, I do think about emotional, I do think about spiritual, I think about it all. And so it is a way, again, to harmonize when I think about holistic. And it's bringing a unified perspective to your fullest expression. And so that's when I think about holistic. Does it mean that I'm always focusing equally on each pillar or each for each domain, but it becomes, I'm always like aware of it, of how to bring more, like, more harmony, more into balance into that. And it just feels, again, it always comes back to a feeling, because it's like, and you can't compartmentalize it. So it's like, it becomes like an energetic leak if one is off. And so I truly believe that it's understanding the differences, and honoring the differences, and then how do we meet the expectations in a way that feels, it feels like aligned. And that's a holistic approach that I do.
I love the way that you kicked off that question. I'm going to move to Mary Ellen and say, all right, Tanya did a really good job with that. What else do you want to add to this?
Well,
Like,
I
how
mean,
else do you think of it?
when I think of it, I think I've come to think of it more now as self-care, things that I didn't think about before. Waking up in the morning and taking time to pray. I was always a spiritual person, but it became so important to me, in my healing journey. And the other thing is that I never, and this is also part of self-care, I would never ask anyone to do anything for me. It was, I had to be the person that was always doing for other people. Oh, you're sick, let me send you some soup. Oh, you need a ride to the doctor, I'm there for you. But when it came to me, it was very difficult for me to ask people for help. But as I became very sick, I had but no choice to surrender. And so when I think of it now, it was all part of my self-care and healing.
Yeah, no doubt. The surrender piece is huge. In the particular example you're talking about, of course, it's huge. But I think surrender is huge in general, for a lot of people, in terms of, we want to control everything. We can't. And so, surrendering to everything is happening for us is one of the ways I've thought about this too. Nicole, how about you? What do you want to add to this about a holistic approach?
Probably what I would add is, not only in my own life, my own personal life, but in the work that I do with my clients, I find that, the mind body, the whole, like staying in the mind, staying logical, staying out of the feelings isn't enough. And even in the feelings, you have to incorporate the body. And so I actually ended up going and getting, some mindfulness certification, some trauma-informed yoga certifications, because I realized that the body has to also be involved. You just can't stay, solely in the mind's logical, or even just in the feelings. You got to get in the body. And I'm sure many people are familiar with the book by Bessel van der Kolk, but it's, The Body Keeps the Score. And I very much believe in that. And so just incorporating that body, and movement, and whether it's yoga or just any kind of activity, in addition to getting in touch with your mind and your feelings, and is just as important.
Yeah, here to that. I'll add my 2 cents on holistic for you guys from my physical therapy days. There's 2 ways I thought about that when a client would come in. The first one was the whole body. Like if they came in with an ankle pain and I didn't also take a look at their neck and their back and their whole myofascial system, I would miss a piece. I would miss a piece of the healing that was, an opportunity to heal in a more holistic way, or a more effective, long-lasting way, if I didn't look at the whole system. And then the other thing for me was, if I also didn't take time to ask them how life was going, and I missed that they had, a job change, a loss of a loved one, something big in their life, and I wasn't holistically asking or looking at the picture there, I would miss a big opportunity for better healing, even if it was ankle pain, no matter what the thing was that they were coming in for. So I learned and from a very early stage that there were a lot of ways to look at that soul, body, mind, soul holistically. And it's just so much more effective to do it that way.
Yeah.
Um,
And if I could add something real quick, Laura, I think in terms of your physical therapy example, I think it's a great example, because in therapy world, we have to make sure that we're not getting so stuck in that we're looking at the full picture, the full system, the full family system, the full everything, to really that we're not just zeroing in and losing sight of the bigger picture, is what I hear you say. And so that's really important too. I agree.
yeah, holistic is the bigger picture. And incorporating all the pieces, and then the word integration came up a bunch. It's really important. Okay, so I have one more for all of you. Mary Ellen, I'm going to start with you for this last question. For our listeners today, what's a piece of advice you'd give somebody who might just be stepping on this path of healing, to give them an easy entry point? Just one easy example. What do you want them to know today?
Well, for me, I have to say it's taken me a while to get here. The fact that, I sat down 3 years later to write my story. Because one of the things that I learned in this whole process of the breast cancer is that nothing happens overnight. It all takes time, but it's a willingness and an openness to take the journey, to walk the walk, and to get there. So mine has been a very slow process for healing, both physically and mentally. But to go back to what I said earlier, I reached the point very early on where I surrendered, and I said that I was open to the path forward.
Nice. That openness is it. That's good advice. Nicole, how about you? What's something you want our listeners to know today?
Well, I would actually agree quite a bit with Mary Ellen. Is that I think just keeping your mind open to possibilities, and I think the other thing I would add is kind of something you and I chatted about earlier, which is probably not the staying in tune with yourself, not losing, who you are, parts of who you are, and what's going to be important to do that is, uh, practices for yourself, right? Like having a healthy practice, so I think just making sure that you don't lose those parts of yourself, and staying open to possibilities. And that's probably what I would say is what I would want people to know.
I love it. Perfect. Okay, Tanya, you're gonna close us out today. What's something you want the listeners to know?
I would just want to go back to that negativity bias of the mind. And sometimes that we know that we're just human. So it's not our fault that we have this rumination that just happens. And that, what to know about that is that that is the midline circuit of our brains. We know that just happens because we're human. But because we also are human, we know that we can start to have these practices, like we're all saying, to cultivate. And one of the easiest practices to start to deactivate that midline circuit of our brain is to start to work with the sensory portions of our organs. And the easiest thing is just really concentrating on our breath. So just even noticing and sensing what you are experiencing will start to lessen that chatter in your mind. So it's this beautiful way when anytime you're feeling anxious, which is often for most of us these days, is that just start to notice what you are sensing. And the easiest thing you can sense is just the rise and fall of your chest, and start with that. And then you'll start to notice a little bit of dissipation, a little bit of calming, a little bit of settling of the anxiety. And that's really cool just to know that we don't need anything, again, outside of us. What happens to us internally, sometimes we can't control that, but we can start to work with that. So just want to leave with that sense of empowerment.
Yeah, that's good. I was in a waiting room the other day watching the news, which I don't do at home at all, but happened to catch a statistic that they were sliding across the screen about the levels of anxiety right now are at all-time high levels. And so this is particularly important. Take that big, deep breath, everyone, like the fastest way into your body to clear your mind is what Tanya just talked about. Taking the breath and noticing the sensation. It's something I think that we all will need to do at the next level with the amount of anxiety that's happening around. And take responsibility, everyone, for your own well-being. You are in charge here with awareness. You have the choice. Seek out this beautiful community from Sacred Spaces. Authors, thank you so much for what you do in the world and for being here today to share it with everyone. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you, Laura.
And I'll just continue to say to our listeners, these authors are very generously there for you to answer the question to take the next step. So drop down into the show notes because they're all hooked up with their websites. Take a little exploration and see what they're up to in the world. It's a lot of awesomeness. And of course, you are all invited to our live stream book launch party for Sacred Spaces Volume 2. Subtle Shifts for Mind, Body, and Home Transformation. We're going to have that on November 4th, 10 a.m. Eastern. It's going to be on the Brave Healer Productions Facebook page, which is also below for you. And if you're listening anywhere around that time, November 1st, the book is due out. So you can hop over to Amazon and grab your copy and start your adventure today. And lastly, everybody, remember, your words change the world when you're brave enough to share them. So it's time to be brave. See you next time, everyone.